In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience detoxing off of cannabis over the past 6 weeks and talk about some cannabis stats, withdrawal symptoms, and my story. And lastly, why most people lose the battle to completely stop using cannabis. Make sure you stay tuned to the end for the real on why most people can't quit weed. First, some cannabis use stats. In 2022, about 52 million Americans use marijuana. And in Texas, cannabis shops are popping up like Buc-ee's, and I can even get THC flower and concentrates delivered straight to my door. Thanks, Donald and Mitch. Weed is being pitched to us as an all-natural medicine for pain, anxiety, and sleep aid. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? 91% of Americans favor some form of legalization, and 67% of American physicians favor national medical legalization. My own doctor stated, "I wish more of my patients smoked cannabis versus drinking alcohol." But in a recent survey, they found that 4.3% of Americans have tried to quit marijuana at least 6 times and failed. Along with this, withdrawal symptoms are starting to be fully understood. So today, we are going to explain exactly what happens to your body when you try to quit weed, and I'll share my experience over the past 6 weeks of detoxing off the ganja. In days 1 and 2 of quitting, this is when withdrawal symptoms start. A meta-analysis of over 23,000 people found that 47% of these users had at least 3 of the following withdrawal symptoms: nausea, headaches, depressed mood, difficulty getting to sleep, sweating, anger, nervousness, decreased appetite, and strange dreams. For me, I have only experienced poor sleep, some minor depression, vivid dreaming, and raised blood pressure, probably due to higher stress levels and anxiety that I use the plant to relieve. Now, the risk of withdrawal symptoms is proportional to the amount of marijuana you've been consuming. For example, someone who consumed marijuana 3 times a week would likely have less withdrawal symptoms than someone who consumed marijuana every day. Myself, I've been an everyday user for 26 years, using in the evening to relax and go to sleep. And in the last 9 years, I've used 24/7, partaking pretty much like a cigarette smoker would smoke cigarettes. In the morning, at lunch, at dinner, and in the evening before going to bed. Now, day 3 of quitting is when irritability and anxiety seem to peak for most people. This is where, for me, I stopped thinking about the habit of smoking and pretty much stopped thinking about using it too terribly much. Thankfully, the anxiety and irritability begin to dissipate in those coming days. But on the other hand, the vivid dreams and difficulty in getting to sleep only begin to increase on day 3. This information has led to new research suggesting that chronic cannabis users, like myself, may induce intrinsic sleep problems. For myself, when using, I could fall asleep fairly quickly, sleep well for about 4 to 5 hours. When I did wake up at maybe 3 a.m., I could smoke again and fall right back to sleep, and sleep till about 7 a.m. and get what I considered a good night's sleep. I had nearly no memorable dreams for 25 years while smoking. Not true during detox. During detox, I had difficulty falling asleep. I awake from a dream around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. often, then never feel like I actually get back to sleep as the dreams continue, and then I wake up feeling like I didn't hardly get any sleep at all, which leads to being irritable throughout the day. Around day 4 of quitting is when the amazing physiological changes in your brain start to occur. Marijuana contains molecules which mimic natural neurotransmitters that are already in your brain called cannabinoids. At baseline, cannabinoids circulate at lower quantities in your body, but when you ingest marijuana, you create an influx of cannabinoids into your system. Most specifically, an increase in the psychoactive component, delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which is what most of us know as THC. Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol is a psychoactive compound that induces the high that most people associate with smoking cannabis. The THC you consumed while getting baked resembles the natural neurotransmitter anandamide and creates increased neuron activity in certain parts of your brain, which causes thoughts, imagination, creativity, and perception to magnify. The THC binding to your neurons also affects dopamine and norepinephrine levels in the body, which can lead to euphoria, pain modulation, and for some anxiety. But the thing is, as you continue to consume cannabis, it can become harder to quit. The studies show this to be the case, especially when you start using in your teenage years. For me, I didn't start partaking of the plant until I was nearly 30 years old. I'm now 56. You start to create a desensitization and downregulation of your endocannabinoid receptors, specifically the CB1 receptor. Since this receptor modulates the systems of short-term memory, increased cannabis use can mean a decrease in short-term memory. Although I haven't found this to be true in my situation, as I feel my short-term memory is pretty good and would relate any memory loss to my age, not my use of cannabis. THC also affects neurons involved in the experience of novelty. When THC binds specific neurons, the influx creates an exciting sense of novelty, even the mundane, repetitive tasks like washing dishes. This is why when you smoke certain strains, you might find yourself cleaning out the garage or working in the yard or garden for 4 hours and wonder where the time went. It's also why you might get high and walk down your same street, feel enlightened. Wow, is everything in bloom in the middle of the winter? But regular cannabis use leads to the downregulation of these same neurons, making it harder to quit and making it harder to feel the bliss of a new experience when sober. This is why I can hardly wait to have the first hit after this detox session is over, because I know that all my receptors are going to be restored and it's going to be all new again. For some, after too much consumption, you might go to Austin, Texas for the first time, see the Bevo Longhorn, and be like, that's it? It's a cow with horns? But thankfully, on day 4 of quitting marijuana, the CB1 cannabinoid receptors will likely have returned to normal functioning. Essentially, it only takes around 4 days of quitting marijuana for the neuronal changes in your brain to go back to baseline or normal function. What a relief. This is new research, and I think it is important that we continue to study this, especially as the popularity of cannabis and its potency skyrockets. We need lots of long-term evidence about how this could be affecting our brains. I am focusing on how the THC affects the systems in your and my body. How you get that THC into you might involve smoking, and the act of smoking could have lasting effects on your lungs. But there is actually a specific way that the THC in your system can have longer impacts on your neurology of the brain. If you consume too much marijuana during development, such as in adolescence, you can create long-term neurophysiological effects. So if I had started smoking weed in 10th grade, which by definition is adolescence, we could be talking about completely different consequences on my brain and body. But my story is, I started smoking in my very late 20s, nearly 30 years old, to overcome the anxiety of a mother passing away from cancer, a divorce I was going through, moving to a city 4 times as large as the one I was moving from, and having a job that caused me to have panic attacks when I would lie down to go to sleep. Instead of using the physician's prescribed drugs for sleep, Librium, I chose cannabis. So was it worth it? Because when it comes to marijuana's lasting neuronal effects, the age of your brain matters, and I would never recommend it for teenagers, as the brain is not fully developed, and I feel damage could very well be done. But with my brain being fully developed when I started using, I most likely would have no neurological effects from cannabis use. But back to day 5 to 7 of quitting weed. A recent study found most people who tried to quit marijuana would fail on days 5 to 7, and it was hardest for people who were dependent on marijuana. Marijuana dependency can be defined as someone who has consumed weed daily for 10 years and has attempted to quit numerous times, but not made it past day 7. can also be defined by a continued use of marijuana despite social, psychological, and physical impairments. It should be noted that although many scientists agree that marijuana dependence does exist, they also agree that dependence on marijuana is less severe than dependence on alcohol, cocaine, or opiates. But for marijuana detox, days 5 to 7 are important days to focus on when trying to quit, as they statistically are the biggest hurdle for most people. For me, by day 7, sure, I wanted to consume, but the desire wasn't so bad I had the shakes, sweats, or headaches, or any nausea. It was simply the desire to relax and enjoy the day a little better. For most, I believe, it's simply that boredom sets in and cannabis really helps deal with being bored. Or the weekend comes and we have nothing to do, so getting a little baked makes it more fun to go to a movie and spend $200 on food and drinks. Or maybe the human body really needs the plant to function properly. But finally, if you make it to day 28 of no weed, all withdrawal symptoms disappear. You probably still can't pass a drug test, but your affected endocannabinoid system and CB1 receptors will return to baseline or normal. And you might be able to understand, remember, or stay awake for that movie. So I'm not saying that detoxing or quitting cannabis completely is easy, but I think it's really important to understand what will happen to you if you do decide to quit or need to detox. For me, quitting and not thinking about it hourly was easy. The dreams suck, the restless sleep is not good, and I feel it has led to more stress, anxiety, and ultimately a higher blood pressure. I haven't found that I'm more productive, just less focused on what I'm doing at times. But cannabis affects every human body differently. What may cause some people anxiety may cause the next person to take a nap or vice versa. I do think that education and learning is what allows you to make the best choices for you. And I think science shows us that quitting weed isn't as easy as we might think it is, but it is also not like quitting nicotine, opiates, heroin, or cocaine. If you found my journey through detox helpful, hit the subscribe button, like, and comment below about your detox journey. I would love to hear your take on detox or quitting completely.